Have a Nice Death is a game with a rich and diverse combat system, featuring a range of weapons and spells meant to allow you to effortlessly demolish the competition.
So what if we got rid of all that?
That's right, with the proper combination of curses and equipment, I can show you that this once impossible challenge is in fact doable. So now I'm gonna be Have a Nice Death without attacking. Just a little side note, I am going to allow seriously limited use of my scythe to clear platforming challenges that are normally impossible without it, and I'm going to be playing on self-fulfillment for the purpose of preserving my sanity. Anyway, let's begin. I immediately started out by picking up the Parasol 1.0 in order to get a defense buff and a future periodic effect before immediately rolling Knave of Swords without using a single reroll, so now we have a small scythe floating around us so that we can actually deal damage. However, just because it's our only source of damage doesn't mean it's a good one. Regardless, we managed to keep pushing all the way to Brad, the first boss, and oh my gosh. We were doing like no damage to this thing. This footage is at like 16 times speed, and it's way longer than it should be. A hop, skip, and a mental breakdown later, we had defeated Brad. Next, I decided to go to the Industrial Pollution Department because I figured that upgrading green curses would be better than upgrading red curses for this run. Plus, there's some enemies in toxic food processing that would have been a nightmare to deal with in this challenge. It was also here that I found a neat little mechanic where orbs fired by boomas will actually deal friendly fire damage, which let me get through a lot of this department. At this point, however, I was getting worried, since damage from projectile spam enemies like the sea glues was starting to rack up. I was also seriously sweating the fight with Grimes, the star of this department, since he can deal some massive damage to you if you let the fight go on for too long. And if I went in doing the same amount of damage as I did to Brad, I feared I might take a run-ruining amount of damage, assuming I didn't just straight up die. However, not long later, I would end up getting a curse that would change the run. Wait, hold on. If we take Burning Up, that could make this challenge infinitely less painful. And we're going to put your book into it because, well, we can't attack anyway, so it doesn't matter. If Infuse works on the bodyguard scythe, this curse is game-changing. Holy crap, this is game-changing! Finally! Damage! Holy cow, yes, this is going so much better. Oh my gosh, yes! We can actually deal a reasonable amount of damage now. Yes! What Burn essentially does is that it deals 5 damage per tick to each enemy afflicted, and has the added benefit of spreading between enemies. And it also has some pretty nice buffs through curses, but I didn't really get many of them until the very late game. And to make things even better, I was able to completely max out the upgrades on the Parasol 1.0, which not only gives me a massive defense buff, but also periodically summons Damaging Rain, which means yay, more damage other than the bodyguard scythe. All of these amazing upgrades gave me newfound confidence, which I took to Grimes and easily wiped the floor with him. Now, going into this challenge, I had initially planned to go into the Addictions department, since I feared that the Ulcer Monitor spawning new enemies could eventually get out of control. However, when the time came to make the choice, I decided to go into the Physical Illness department, since there are a lot of tanky and annoying enemies in the Addictions department, and I figured with my current build, the enemies spawned by the Ulcer Monitors could be pretty manageable. There's also a neat little mechanic where when a Heartbreaker dies, the resulting explosion is capable of friendly fire, similar to the orbs fired by Boomas. And thankfully, just as I had anticipated, my build was easily able to take out the enemies spawned by the Ulcermoners. At this point, I was hoping to pick up some weapons that gain periodic effects when upgraded, like the Liberius Skulls or the Piercing Ray. Unfortunately, I had not been so lucky. Fortunately, when I stopped at the shop to sell my useless weapons and to see what Mark had in stock, I was able to pick up the Imminent Burnout Curse. This curse will periodically launch damaging crows on either side of you. While the damage from the crows alone is pretty lackluster, it's still damage nonetheless and can help spread some burns around, which is invaluable in a challenge like this. Now it was time for the next sorrow, Hector Crank. Naturally, I went into the fight with Crank feeling incredibly confident.
I got humbled real hard.
I ended up taking way more damage than I was comfortable with, but thankfully this is self-fulfillment, so I ended up healing it off pretty quickly. When I was looking at my selection of curses after defeating Crank, I noticed that I had a curse available that boosted the damage of my scythe. Now, at this point, the Knave of Swords bodyguard scythe was still dealing like 5 damage per hit. And suddenly, I wanted to test if scythe boosting effects increase the damage of the bodyguard scythe. I decided to test it going into the Modern Warfare department, and...
Oh boy, I hate these things. Wait, did I just see 6 damage? Holy crap. The scythe, the bodyguard scythe gets the bonuses from scythe damage. Okay, this is good to know.
This information was massive and could be a potential game changer. Going through the Modern Warfare department was pretty easy due to it being my favorite department and all, but I want to bring attention to the fact that throughout this entire run, I have not gotten a single weapon that is useful for this challenge. At this point, I would even be happy with Murray of Crows, since at least it would increase the damage of the crows launched by Imminent Burnout, but nope, just no good weapons for me, I guess. Regardless, it was time to fight the next sorrow, Major Warren Pliskin. The fight immediately got off to a rough start as my Pro Controller began running low on battery, forcing me to switch to Joy-Cons, which could interfere with the quality of my gameplay later on. On top of that, I had set a rule for myself that while I am allowed to use the scythe to dodge certain boss attacks, I had to use it as little as possible, which means that instead of using the scythe to dodge Pliskin's jetpack attack, I was forced to just dash through it, which led to a lot of unnecessary hits. Despite the somewhat long odds, I was still able to defeat Pliskin and move on to the next department. Under normal circumstances, this would be a good sign that we're almost to the end of the run.
But there is a small problem.
Now, if this video was recorded recently, I would have immediately gone on to the inevitable time department. But this video was recorded when the Switch version was still on the initial release, meaning that instead of having a choice between Modern Warfare and Natural Disasters, I was forced to go through Modern Warfare and then Natural Disasters and then Inevitable Time.
This issue is also made a lot worse considering the fact that Natural Disasters is my least favorite department. Because this department is projectile spam hell.
But I mean, hey, more burn damage kinda makes up for it.
Still no useful weapons though. Silver lining though, this department wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was gonna be. I'm gonna chalk this up to the fact that my build is super duper passive, so instead of being aggressive and trying to deal damage like I normally am, I was able to just focus more on dodging the projectiles that I hate so much. With that in mind, it was now time to move on to the next sorrow, Catherine Imamura. This fight was very much not easy, since she took forever to kill and her attacks deal way too much damage. In the end though, I was still able to win and finally move on to the inevitable time department.
Now, at first, I initially thought this was going to be like natural disasters, since at the time, Inevitable Time was also one of my least favorite departments, but again, like with natural disasters, it wasn't that bad.
My defense was also like bonkers crazy.
And it wasn't until now that I finally got a weapon that I could use. Frost Toxic, which now means that I will periodically have damaging corals that slow down enemies to spawn near me. It's not great, but it's better than nothing. Finally, we made it to the Bridgets. The Bridgets are honestly a massive pain in the butt because they take so long to kill, and this is already a garbage fight. So, yeah, this sucked. Oh, trust me, it gets worse. You see, the problem with time is that at this point, I'd been quitting to the title screen every time I was about to die, because I'll be honest, I really don't want to go through all this garbage again. Every time I needed to reset against time, I would have to fight the Bridgets all over again. Like, 1.5 hours of this stream was spent on every other department. The rest, like hour and a half, were spent on time. Not to mention that during Time's fight, not only does he do a ton of damage, even despite all my defense, his attacks inflict almost no injuries, meaning that all the animas that I may or may not collect will do, like, pretty much nothing. Eventually, after an incredibly long time of pain, suffering, and wondering why the heck I breathed this challenge into existence, I defeated Time. And with that, I managed to beat Have a Nice Death without attacking. Now, in hindsight, there are a lot of things I could have done better in this challenge. For example, the rule that allowed limited use of the scythe in order to dodge boss attacks was mainly invented because of Catherine and Time. Catherine is 100% possible without that rule. Time, I'm not actually sure, but if anybody else wants to try this challenge, I gladly invite you to do so. And for those of you who watched the end of this video, thank you, it means a lot. And if you want to show your support for this kind of content, then be sure to like and subscribe. And you can also follow my Twitch, where this challenge was streamed. So, yeah, that's the end. Pokemon DLC stuff coming soon.